about now? Does that work? All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to bring the meeting to order and ask the clerk to take attendance.
David Becker. Michael Haley. Karen Gallagher.
You have to stop. They're not in order.
Carolyn Richmond. Here. Eric Sunman. Here. Pete Ambrose. Here. Amy Jennings. Here. John Matola. Here. Jeff Steele. Here. Keith Varian. Here. Ed Bateson. Here. Tom Conley. Here. Hank Ferentz. Here. Dave McKenzie. Here. Mary McCullough. Here. Heather Dean. Present. Joe DiMartino. Here. Art Hug. Here. Amy Mezoff. Here. Joe Palmer. Here. Matt Ambrose. Josh Garskoff. Here. Chris McAleese. Here. Ruth Smay. Here. Ann Stamler. Here. Chris Brogan. Here. Lenora Campbell. Here. Julie Gottlieb. Here. Sheila Marmion. Here. Jay Walk. Here. Jen Hochberg. Here. Kevin Hopkins. Here. Eric Newman. Mark Patton. Here. Hal Schwartz. Here. Kathy Braun. Here. Dana Carey. Here. Alan Marks. Here. Tom McCarthy. Here. Jeff Stopa. Here. Bill D'Amica. Here. Joe Fellner. Here. Ellen Jacob. Here. Nick Morably. Carol Pontrelli. Here. Chuck Abercrombie. Here. Lee Hannum. Here. Ken Lee. Here. Bruce Ryan. Here. Carol Way. Here.
We're done. All right, thank you. If I could ask us all to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If I could ask you to remain standing for a moment of silence. We've had a number of family losses I'd like you to keep in your thoughts and your prayers. Representative Becker's grandfather, Representative Bateson's mother, Representative Richmond's mother, and Representative McAleese's father. Thank you. At the annual organizational meeting, our first order of business is to elect a moderator. If I might have any nominations for moderator. Representative Hurley.
Michael Hurley, District 1. I'd like to nominate Jeff Steele to be moderator for the upcoming RTM term.
Thank you. Is there a second? Representative Schwartz, we have a second. Are there any other nominations? All right, can I have a motion about nominations be closed? Spoken. Mr. Bateson, thank you. Since there's only one nominee, all those in favor of Representative Steele as moderator, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Congratulations, Mr. Steele.
Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Michael and Hal, for nominating and seconding my nomination. And I also want to thank everyone for electing me moderator for another year. I'm once again very appreciative and honored by your support. I will take this both as an indication of your confidence in me as well as the fact that nobody else wants to do it. We've certainly had a packed year. And this next year looks to be equally challenging, I think we can all agree, with redistricting, the budget, contracts, and many other items that we'll need to address. As many of you know by now, my goal has always been to moderate with an even-handed approach and to maintain an orderly flow of business by adhering closely to the RTM's rules to regulate and Robert's Rules of Order. I'll try to ensure that business is conducted one item at a time, that all motions are in order, that members obtain the floor properly, and that justice, courtesy, and impartiality are ensured for all. And those goals will not change. And please know that I'm always open to your input, your suggestions, comments, and constructive criticism in regards to improving the course of business or my role as moderator. So thank you again. The next order of business is to elect a deputy moderator for the ensuing year. And now I will entertain a motion for deputy moderator. Representative Ambrose?
Peter Ambrose, District 2. I'd like to nominate Hank Ferentz for deputy moderator of the RTM.
Are there any seconds? Representative Mottola? A second. Are there any other nominations for deputy moderator? Hearing none, I'll now close nominations. I have a motion to close the nominations. Representative Schwartz, second. Representative Lee. And we'll now vote on electing Representative Ferentz as deputy moderator. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Congratulations, Representative Ferentz. Do you want to make a few words? Do you have anything you'd like to say?
I'd just like to thank you all for your confidence, and I'll try to do at least as good a job as I did last year. And I was up here twice. Maybe I can get up here 3 times.
Maybe you will. I just wanted to, there are a couple things I need to go over before we start this meeting, and I don't anticipate it being a long meeting, but I just want to first take this opportunity to commend and applaud the efforts of this town and the entire police, fire, health, building, planning and zoning, and public works departments and all other town departments, along with the Fairfield Citizen Corps Council, all the volunteers within Fairfield, and from outside the town and state for helping with the cleanup and recovery effort here in Fairfield after the hurricane. Hurricane Sandy, we don't need to point out, has created a devastating emotional, financial, and physical toll on so many people and their properties. It really was a lifetime event. But we did come together as a town, and we're still doing so to face this aftermath. People are still dealing with the impact, and the cost for those affected will be great. But we can say that this town and all its residents all pulled together in the spirit of teamwork and reacted heroically and stoically to help us get through this disaster. So I want to thank again the volunteers and the town's response teams and the immense amount of work and effort that was expended by all of them and the risks that were taken in the face of dangerous situations. This was a test for our town, and while everything is not back to normal and there's still much to do, it did show our resiliency and how our town can respond as a united force in the face of disaster. So thank you. I was going to quickly, this is sort of the annual meeting where we just go over some things. I'm not going to recite pages upon pages of things that I would normally do at the beginning of the term, but I am, or have been asked to remind everyone here about a few things going forward, and I'm just going to go over them quickly. Hopefully it will take no more than 3 or 4 minutes, but just bear with me and then we'll move on. Some of these are just updates to things we've talked about in the past, and others are reminders of codes of ethics and other things that we need to do, but I'm going to give you the real condensed Reader's Digest version. I asked that committee, this is an important thing, I asked that committee meeting minutes be submitted to the town clerk and to me as expeditiously as possible so that it can be sent out to the entire membership with enough time for members to review before our main meetings on Monday. And it slipped here and there, so I would really ask people to make a best effort so everyone can be prepared for the meetings. And again, I do ask that they include, date, time, location, whether a quorum was present, who was at the meeting, and also who was absent. Because otherwise, when I write it up, I have to figure out who's absent and then eliminate those and figure out who else. It becomes a little time-consuming, so if you just indicate that. Who voted for, against, or abstained on any issues, who the presenters were, and who the presiding officer was. As well as you're welcome to put any specific motions and their outcomes should also be included. No discussion is needed, but generally what was done and what was said. Just going over a couple quick things. Speaking limits, as you probably know by now, and according to our rules to regulate and Robert's rules to regulate, each member is allowed to address an item twice for no more than 10 minutes each time unless the moderator changes this for a particular vote or the body itself makes a motion to limit or extend limits of debate. So I just want to remind everybody about that it's not a random decision on how long you speak, but there is a formula to it. As you all know, each member I'm asking to speak on point, and that is to limit to the discussion at hand. If you go off topic, I'll do my best to refocus. This is, as we know, a public meeting, therefore public is allowed to speak on any item. They cannot ask questions, but they can provide comments. As a reminder about calling the previous question, which sometimes we forget, that does cut off debate and moves the body to a vote. The purpose is to shorten a sometimes excessively long discussion, and it has worked, but we just got to remember that it cannot happen until the public has had an opportunity to speak. As town officials, again, I want to emphasize that we all expect our body to respect proper decorum behavior, and that is why I ask everyone to limit cell phone and BlackBerry usage in other activities, along with excessive or loud talking with each other that may be considered to be distractions or disrespectful to members of the public. So please ask you to consider that. If you come in late or leave early, please tell the town clerk in the front, as the number of people can affect whether we have a 2/3 vote on certain items and whether there's a quorum still in place. And I'm almost done. I also remind everyone to check the rules on conflicts of interest, which are clearly stated in the town charter under Article 11.2. It's probably worth reading again. It'll take you about 2 minutes. Just please make sure you are familiar with them. And also in regards to Freedom of Information Act rules, I would like to remind everyone that the definition of a meeting, just so everyone's clear, I don't know if I've ever stated this, but a definition of a meeting is a convening or assembly of a quorum of a body to discuss or act upon a matter over which the body has supervision, control, jurisdiction, or advisory power. So, as long as the group is less than a quorum, there can be no meeting under FOI. Therefore, as long as fewer than 26 members of this body, regardless of party, are present together, there is not a meeting, and there's no illegality to it. The problem is when a group of 26 or more RTM members email each other, then that would constitute an illegal meeting, and that's why I very much emphasize not sending messages to everybody and hitting reply to all. It is very important. And further, there can be conflicts with a caucus. Anytime a caucus speaks as a group or in an email, totally legal, that email does not get forwarded to a non-caucus member, or else it is an illegal caucus. That's when FOI comes into play. If that ever had to be taken up, it could happen. So email is the real dangerous thing. I just want to remind everyone about that. And finally, we are all members of the RTM and represent thousands of voters in town. We all have different opinions on the issues. I will ask that no personal attacks or direct criticisms be made towards any members of this body, or you'll be called out of order. This will also apply to members of the public. There's no place for that type of dialogue here, and I just ask everyone to respect everyone else, whether you agree with opinions or not. So that's my spiel, and hopefully it will sink in. Next item is number 3, to nominate and elect members to serve on the Special Legislative Management Committee, also known as the Committee on Committees, which consists of 2 members of the minority party and 3 members of the majority party. And thank you, family, for coming by. The Committee on Committees, which consists of 2 members of the minority party and 3 members of the majority party, this committee makes decisions on membership of our standing committees and other special committees that may get formed. I will now entertain a motion for nominations to the Special Legislative Management Committee. Representative Ambrose and Representative Schwartz, if you just want to go up to the microphone.
Peter Ambrose, District 2. I'd like to nominate David Becker, Joe Palmer, and Joe Fellner as members to the Special Legislative. Better? I'd like to nominate Dave Becker, Joe Palmer, and Joe Fellner as members for our party to the Special Legislative Management Committee.
Hal Schwartz, District 7. I would like to nominate Hal Schwartz and Kevin Hopkins as members to that SLC.
Is that a conflict?
Can I have a second to those slates? Representative Dean, I'll just take a second A second. Representative McCarthy, if that matters, if we can even do that. Now, is there any discussion among the body on this slate? Any members of the public? Okay, we're now going to vote on the election of representatives to the Special Legislative Management Committee. Representatives Becker, Palmer, Fellner, Schwartz, and Hopkins. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Congratulations to all 5 of you. This was not on the agenda, but I added it last week, and that is to hear a report from the First Selectman on, as I'll term, post-storm cleanup / recovery issues.
Good evening. For a quick report on Sandy, I think to start with, we learned a lot from Irene, and actually we benefited a great deal by having Irene come first, because we really were able to go to school on that, look at what happened, look at what we did, how we responded, and look at how to improve that. Sandy was different in some ways. It was a multiple-day event, and we knew that right from the start. It came along with a lot more flooding than we had during Irene, and Fairfield was one of the hardest-hit towns along the coast. We had a number of goals. One was to improve communication with a more consistent message across all of our channels, not only with the code red voicemails, but with the website, with Facebook, with emails, using our call center, and with the checkpoints, making sure we got the same message out to the police and National Guard that were managing our checkpoints that we're getting out to everybody else. We were able to use Facebook, and what was really cool this time is we were able to take advantage of what I'll call the informal network. So what happened is between the town Facebook page, the police Facebook page, and the fire department Facebook page, those pages were being shared. So we're getting a much faster rendition out there. The other neat thing about Facebook is it's two-way. So we're able to monitor some of the communication taking place out there. And what happens is 3 or 4 days into the storm, same thing started to happen during Irene, is that you start to get some management by rumor. And my best example of that, and I'm sure a number of you saw it, was that the rumor started. Fairfield's out of gas. There's long lines at the gas station. It's all those folks from New York and New Jersey coming up here to steal our gas. Now, part of that was true in the sense that it applied to Fairfield, New Jersey, but didn't apply to Fairfield, Connecticut. But because we saw that start on Facebook, because we were able to go out and verify that wasn't the case, we were able to get out another message saying, hey, that's not the case. All right? That happened in a couple other instances too, but it's kind of neat to see that kind of two-way communication take place and help the residents stay at ease because we can address some of the concerns that are starting to bubble up. The call center also provided a channel for non-emergency questions. Realizing this was a worse storm with more flooding, more trees down, more incidents down, one of the 9/11 call center folks came up to about 3 days in and said, you know, it doesn't feel as bad as Irene. And what that person meant was they're not getting all the non-emergency calls. They're getting just the ones that ought to go to 911. The call center provided a way for us to not only take non-emergency calls, but also to learn from those. The call center would either have the answer or get the answer, and then the call center would know what that answer was for the next round of calls. So it was kind of a way to grow our intelligence and deal with frequently asked questions. The call center was also responding to questions that were asked on the town Facebook page. So we got a lot of good out of that, and importantly, it was staffed by various town departments, from human resources to finance to health to various volunteers that came in, including some members of this body, so thank you. Financing and IT actually came in over the prior weekend to the storm to run payroll. If you're one of the folks out there working at night in the cold, in the rain, it's nice to know your paycheck's actually going to be there on Friday, whether the IT center got flooded or not, and we came within a few yards of that happening on Monday night. Thanks to DPW out there working with the sump pumps to keep the water at bay and in the parking lot of Sullivan Independence Hall and not in the basement of Sullivan Independence Hall. The EOC was expanded and staffed to work in shifts. Because we knew this was going to be a longer storm, we couldn't muscle it through the way we did with Irene. Irene, we just showed up in the EOC and worked till it was over. But Irene showed up, made land at like 10 o'clock and was gone by 2 o'clock. Sandy was much worse, much longer, and we knew it was going to be a longer term, so we actually planned to work in shifts so folks would be around and well rested in doing that. The Ludlow shelter had as many as 280 people in it and over 40 pets. want to thank the Board of Ed and Central Office for helping provide the food to that group of folks. And it was staffed by our CERT team and volunteers. And by all accounts, from all the folks I talked to, I heard great comments back on how the guests there, if you will, were taking place. We even had some moms from Sherman come up and really make it an adventure for their kids to get out of the beach area and make sure their families were safe. We planned right from the start for extra patrols in the dark neighborhoods, knowing that neighborhoods would be out of power potentially for several days. One of the things we learned from Irene is we needed extra police patrols through those neighborhoods. The other thing we learned from Irene is that we're going to need checkpoints in beach areas with the flooding. In Irene, that was pretty much one checkpoint at the kind of at Reef and Fairfield Beach Road. Obviously, in this storm, it was more. We requested National Guard assistance so we could get the additional staff, and we requested that right away. So we were there right from the start, and it helped our police get back to their duties of policing and doing the extra patrols we needed. A big thank you to our residents who listened, to our mandatory evacuation message, and our calls to stay home and off the streets. We had probably close to 4,000 homes that we requested mandatory evacuation from. The vast majority did. And if they hadn't, when that water stayed the next day, Tuesday, we would have never been able to get everybody out of there who did. As it turned out, we only had 25 or 30 additional rescue requests. We were able to handle those with police and fire. And because people stayed off the streets, I think that contributed greatly to saving lives. When you look at what happened Monday night, all the trees came down. It felt like in about a 15-minute period. We had 3 incidents where cars, wires, and trees got entangled. I'm not quite sure what those folks were doing out driving in the middle of a hurricane. But what happens when that takes place, it's not just the person's life that's at risk. It's the fireman that responds. It's the police officer who responds. In this case, it's the DPW worker who responds, and the UI representative responds, because you need the UI guy to deactivate the wire, DPW to help remove the tree, fire and police to make sure the person inside is okay. That's a lot of lives at risk for somebody going out taking a ride in the middle of a hurricane. And we're very fortunate that we didn't lose any lives. We're very fortunate that most folks stayed home as we'd requested. When you look at the numbers, they're huge. 6 homes washed away. Another 6 or so were destroyed in place. Over 700 homes had enough flood damage that we had to deactivate their electric meter. 20 or 30 people, as I mentioned, were rescued on Tuesday and Wednesday from their homes. Throughout town, over 1,000 trees were down. We had over 350 reported wire and tree entanglements. All right, that's significant because that means we have to get UI out there along with the DPW crew to clear the road and get the tree removed. DPW did an amazing job of planning throughout all of this, but importantly, also obtained the pumps ahead of time. These were those monster pumps we used down in the beach area to clear the water. They come on flatbed trailers. It takes about 2 hours to set them up, and we literally use those to pump the water back into the sound and help with the clean out. With respect to the UI response, once the teams got here, they actually did a good job of getting folks hooked up and back in power. It was the 3 days that it took them to get here and the communication from UI senior management that left a lot to be desired. We had heard a lot in the last 14 months about all the improvements were made. We did not see those. We've got some significant improvement to go and some accountability that's going to be needed on that side. When I look at all the different town departments, I got to tell you, everybody here should be proud. IT, Human Resources, Parks and Rec, Finance, Engineering, the Library, Building Departments, BOE and Central Office, Police, Fire, DPW, ECC, Health, and more. Literally everyone helped out. No complaints, nobody missed a shift, nobody showed up late. Folks were there on time, making sure things were taken care of. And you would have been proud to be part of all that. You should be proud of what our town did and what our employees did. A special thanks also to the Fairfield U and Sacred Heart, who helped out in many respects during the storm and were part of our emergency management group. Fairfield U opened their dorms to our police and firefighters so they'd have a place to stay at night and rest, and if needed, where their families could come and stay too. In looking at the next steps, one, we've started a review of our flood zone and what happened. The only good news out of this storm is the flooding was significant enough that we really can take a look at evaluating what our flood approach is, where the flooding took place, what worked, what didn't, and what improvements we can make. I've asked DPW and engineering to report back to the Board of Selectmen and our residents with what they found and what options we have in front of us. 2, costs. We're busily at work collecting the FEMA reimbursements. Because this hit more departments, this is taking us a little bit longer to go through and pull together all the costs. We also want to make sure that we get every dollar back because this is going to be a significant number. We're looking for all eligible costs. We're going to evaluate getting a FEMA consultant in here, somebody who's done this before in other storms, to kind of help make sure that we get every dollar back we can. In addition to what I'll call the operating costs, the overtime, that type of thing, we also have capital repairs to Penfield, to Fairfield Beach Road, to Sasco Beach and the concession stand, to the Pequot Avenue Bridge, and the floodgates as kind of the more major ones. And just so everybody's clear, we get about 75% back from eligible costs from FEMA on this. 25% we have to fund ourselves. So we're going back, once we know what that number is, we're going to go back and evaluate the budget and identify how we approach that and what the impact is on this fiscal year. In terms of our storm response, again, we've already started the debriefing on that. We're kind of using the model we followed during Irene. We've got the department heads together. We're looking at what we did well, what opportunities we have for improvement. I've currently asked the department heads to go out to other towns, talk to their counterparts, find out what other towns did better than us, what we can learn from, what we can do. You know, one of the ones that came back, we kind of identified during Irene, did not get a chance to take advantage of it. We looked at Westport. One of the things Westport did is have a captive radio station. So when you're looking at communicating with the internet down, radio becomes a good way to do that. We had identified that. We didn't get to address it as fast. We didn't expect this storm to come back quite as fast this time. But that's one of the things that we will go back and address and make sure we have a better response and we have, if you will, a radio medium to help address our residents. And again, that has to be publicized ahead of time so folks know which station to turn into or tune into. And again, that will be included with a report back to the Board of Selectmen. In terms of utilities and their response, there are really 4 that we deal with: UI, Southern Connecticut Gas, AT&T, and Cablevision. There are a few houses in town that are served by CLNP, but certainly not the majority, and we'll address that also. But I'm getting together with the other first selectmen. We talked a bit during the storm and identified that we really need a unified front, if you will, to talk to UI about. When it gets up to Hartford, we get lost in all the CLNP stuff up there. We really want to sit down with UI here and talk to them about what we've learned, what we expect, and what has to improve for next time. We're also working with our state delegation. And the idea would be to get the state delegates from not only Fairfield, but the other surrounding towns that are in UI country and make sure we sit down and get UI to take us seriously and become part of the solution rather than part of the problem. That's it in terms of my report, Mr. Moderator.
We can open it up now if you guys have questions. I mean, this is a good time to do it. Certainly, this is not the only time to do it, but if you have some questions. Representative Mirabile?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nick Mirabile, District 9.
Nick.
I forgot all the rules. I apologize. Nick Mirabile, District 9. Thank you for that report. It was quite in depth, and I think, like you said, I think the town did a wonderful job. The reports I heard back from most of the people I spoke to said that the department heads did tremendous, and from a personal standpoint, I thought that it was managed very well, certainly as well. I just have a question about some of the damage that was done. If you could just drill down a little bit and give us a little bit more detail on some of the cost, if you know, or if you have an idea of some of the damage that was done to Penfield, to Sasco, and the floodgates. You mentioned a couple capital projects that may be costly. I wonder if you know any estimates.
I don't have the estimates at the moment. We're going to bring in an engineer to take a look at Penfield, to look at kind of 2 levels. You know, what do we do to repair it, but also what do we do to improve it to make sure that doesn't happen again. So we're not rushing. We want to get that done on a timely basis. but I don't have a full cost at the moment. As soon as we have that, we'll get that out.
Great, thank
And
you.
in Sasco, that was really the concession stand. There's a wall there. Some of the seawall line was changed by a resident that, if you will, lives next door to Sasco Beach.
Small little place next door?
Yeah. So what happened is that with the storm, the concession stand that was on the beach side of the road got moved to the other side of the road. All right. There's also a wall that juts out, so we have to look at reinforcing that. Probably look at repositioning the concession stand so it's not in as dangerous a place for future storms.
Right.
And I think that's the level we're going to look at. What do we change, but also what do we do in anticipation? As much as we don't want this to happen again, given it's happened twice in 2 years, we want to be ready for it next time.
Great. And with Penfield, do you anticipate it'll be open for the start of the beach season?
Wow, I just
don't know, yeah, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure the extent of the damage.
The issue is there's some, I think, some significant improvements that have to be made to the foundation. I just don't know.
Gotcha,
But let's
fair
take
enough.
a look at it. The rough scenario is this. It might take 30 to 60 days to evaluate and design what that is and price that out. Then we're going to come back to the bodies probably at some point to come up with some sort of funding authorization to address that. And then we're going to have to get back to, because even if we get reimbursed, we still need the authority to spend the money. Then we're going to need some time to put that out to bid. Actually, we can put it out to bid first because it's not a school building project. But then we're going to need some time to do the work. So June 30th might be tight, but that's a real kind of rough estimate.
Gotcha, I appreciate it, thank you.
Any other members? Representative Richmond.
Carolyn Richmond, District 1. I believe you have been in correspondence with one of our members, one of our residents in District 1, Mike Donnelly, concerning Pine Creek itself. What is, and what has happened to the creek over the years and some of the difficulties that they had in moving some of the houses that floated down the creek. And so that, to make sure that we do look at what has happened to the creek, the buildup of the silt in there, and so that we do have it mapped properly so that if there is another rescue situation that occurs, that we will have a better understanding of what the creek looks like and some improvements to it. Because I know prior to the storm, this is from last year's storm, we had some of the walls on the creek on the Fairfield Beach side that had fallen in, and they've been that way for a couple of years. Actually, they got worse last year. But we would like to see that something is looked into Pine Creek. Also, if anybody is missing a 60-foot floating dock, it's sitting in front of my house on the dike. So, but I do know that is an area that our residents have asked about, is what is happening with the creek, and to make sure that it is navigable and that we do take care of some of the damages in there.
Okay, thank you. There are a lot of questions out there from a lot of people, and every time you get in one of the either town hall meetings or quasi-town hall meetings, you get to a lot of big detail right away. What we've asked is that engineering and DPW come back to us with a kind of a comprehensive look at what took place, what we can do about it. I'm looking for a report back to the Board of Selectmen, but I fully intend that we do a report probably back out to some of the neighborhood groups too, so they can sit there, so they can answer their questions. And a lot of folks in town have lived there for a number of years. They've lived through a whole bunch of these storms, so I think part of it is to take advantage of some of that knowledge that's out there.
Any other members?
All right, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mike, for doing that. That was important that we heard some of that. We're going to go to item 4, which is next, and that's to consider and act upon the following resolution recommended by the town clerk. Resolve that in accordance with the town charter and state filing rules, the representative town meeting hold their regular meetings for the year 2013 on the following dates: January 28th, February 25th, March 18, April 22nd, May 6th and 20th, June 24th, July 22nd, August 26th, September 23rd, October 28th, November 25th, December 16th. May I have a motion to approve? Representative Schwartz, a second. Representative Mirabili. Now we'll have discussion among the body, or questions or issues with this calendar. Representative Stanler. A subsequent agenda was sent out, right? Yeah. No, that's okay. Yep, it is 2012. Let me ask you something. I read 2013. I read it. Okay. Okay. All right, that's cleared up. Anyone else from the body on the calendar? Any members of the public on the calendar? Okay, hearing no comments, we're going to now vote on item number 4. On the calendar, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the item passes. Next item is number 5, to consider and act upon the minutes of the regular meeting held on October 22nd, 2012. Are there any proposed amendments or revisions to the minutes from the body? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the minutes. Representative McCullough, second. Representative Walk. Any comments from the body on the minutes? I guess we already did discussion. We're now going to, what else do we have? Any comments from the public? We don't go to the public on minutes, do we? Any comments from the public? No, right? It's been a long time. All those in favor of approving the minutes from October, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Abstentions. Representative Patton. And yes, these small little details sometimes I miss. Next is the consent calendar. Actually, there is one item on this month, and that is item number 6, which is to hear, consider, and act upon the following reappointments to the Solid Waste and Recycling Commission as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Sheila M. Dravis, Democrat, 1194 Black Rock Turnpike, term November 2012 to 2016. Sharon B. Pastilli, Democrat, 107 Lotta Drive, term November 2012 to 2016. Item was referred to all standing committees. Does any member wish to divide the consent calendar? Seeing none, we're now going to go ahead and vote on this. All those in favor of approving the consent calendar, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The items pass. Consent calendar passes, and congratulations to Ms. Davis and Pastilli if they are here. Congratulations. We now move on to item number 7, which is to hear, consider, and act upon the following appointment to the Solid Waste and Recycling Commission as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Wendy Brandt Martinez, did I pronounce that properly? Unaffiliated, 684 Catamount Road, term November 2012 to 2016. This was referred to all standing committees. May I have a motion to approve? Representative Ambrose, that's easy. Representative Garskoff, a second. I'm now going to go over committee votes, which is the only time I need to do this tonight. L&A, 7 members were present. Absent were Representatives Bateson, Braun, and Varian. The vote was all 7 in favor. Finance, 8 members were present. Absent were Representatives Ryan and Lee. All 8 were in favor. Public Works and Planning, 6 members were present. Representatives Sunman, McAleese, Matola, and Hannum were absent. Vote was all 6 in favor. Public Health and Safety, 6 members were present. Absent were Representatives D'Amica, Meyer, Matt Ambrose, and Smay. Vote was 2 in favor and 4 abstentions. And if I'm wrong, let me know. But the abstentions, I believe, are Hurley, Way, Walk, and Hug. Education and Recreation, 8 members were present. Absent were Representatives Way and Jennings. Vote was 6 in favor with 2 abstentions, Representatives McCullough and Richmond. We're now going to have discussion among the body, or have we had a motion approved? Yes, we have. Discussion among the body. Item number 7. And I will say that Mrs. Martinez is here in case anybody has any questions. I hope I'm not butchering the name here. Good. No questions, no comments, no discussion. Okay. Any members of the public? All right. Now we're going to come back and vote on item number 7. Voice vote. All those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed? Abstentions? Congratulations, Ms. Martinez. Moving on to item number 8, to hear and consider for the first time amendments to the tax relief for the elderly ordinance, Section 95-7 to Section 95-14.4 of Chapter 95, Article 3 of the Code of the Town of Fairfield, sponsored by the Senior Tax Relief Ordinance Committee. A copy of the proposed ordinance is attached. This item has already gone to the L&A Committee for form and now needs to be listed on the warning for 2 meetings for substance and discussed by appropriate committees prior to each meeting. We're now going to open this item up for questions and discussion among the body. I think everyone is here, including Tax Assessor Donald Ross. There are some handouts here. Representative McCarthy, if you want to pass that out. And I think between Representatives Patton and McCarthy, probably get all your questions answered. But I'll wait a moment for these to be passed out. Sure, I have it right here, right?
Yeah, it's just the one page.
Okay.
That's the requirement. That's
Yep.
it.
Okay, good. Okay.
That's the program as they are today.
Yep.
Right at the website.
Do you want to present anything now? Or
Yeah,
do you
why
feel-
don't I just speak
Okay.
to this
Okay.
quickly?
I'm going to ask Representative McCarthy, or he has asked me to come up and just kind of explain a couple things in the PowerPoint packet that you have, or in the sheet that he just handed out. So if I can just have your attention for a moment. Do you want to do that here? Or?
Yeah, why don't I
Okay.
do that? All right. I won't ask everybody to endure the whole PowerPoint we went through last week, but what I handed out are just 2 pages from that PowerPoint, which I've added. And actually, Representative Garskoff and Becker each asked for this independently. It's a 1-page description of the program. Now, on the first page, it's the program as it currently exists, so we take it right off the town website. And the second page is what that program, the Senior Tax Relief Program, would now look like were we to implement the changes now proposed by the Senior Tax Committee. The first option is the big one. That's the credit program itself. And what we've tried to do is address 3 concerns that we had heard. There was concern over the 2-tiered system of credit. There was concern about the fact that tax increases have outstripped the credit itself. And there was concern about some individuals being disqualified from the program, or they had qualified in prior years because of their income increasing. And so what we attempted to do was convert essentially the average credit based on this year as a starting point to a percentage, so there would be some degree of self-adjustment in the credit itself, and thereby, to some extent, address the concern that the credit itself has been more than eclipsed by tax increase year over year. In committee, a concern was raised that that ought to have a cap, and in looking at the specifics, that's probably a good idea. So if you look at, again, I'm looking at option 1 proposed, and I placed a cap in there as a placeholder. The second program is the freeze program. It really hasn't changed. All the freeze program does and has done is you can freeze your tax increase for a 5-year period. After that, it would go back, or you would either have to defer. The third option is the deferral program, and this is a significant change, where in prior years you would have been able to defer the tax increase. What we're now suggesting is that for senior and disabled homeowners 75 years of age or older can defer up to 50% of their property tax. That would involve a payback and a lien, and that provision would be subject to availability. Now, again, in subcommittee, Representative Schwartz was expressed concern, as did Representative Hurley, that this could be a very expensive program. The intent was this would be a long-term solution to try to address concerns where taxpayers felt they had to leave the town of Fairfield because they couldn't afford the tax. And over the long run, this could potentially become self-sustaining. But the concern was that it would have to be implemented in a very measured sense. And so we've taken attempts to do that, limiting the qualification to taxpayers over 75, and limiting the amount that could be deferred to 50%. But the end, Don Ross's shop would have to be the gatekeeper of this program, because we would not make it so generous that it were to compromise the tax credit program itself. So that, in a nutshell, is a description of the program. One other point, Representative Hurley was concerned, do we have any empirical evidence that suggests that seniors do have to leave Fairfield because they can't afford the tax? We have empirical evidence. Some of it's to some extent contradictory, but it appears that if I look at U.S. Census from 2000 and what was it, the CERC, which is I think it's Connecticut or Community Economic Recovery data, that suggests that the senior population has remained flat. However, if you look at specifically seniors within the income range that would be eligible for this program, those senior households had in fact, the data indicates those seniors had declined in population. So that would lend some credibility to what we've heard anecdotally, that people have said, I can't afford to stay here any longer and I'm going to leave. So that's the program in a one-pager, and all the changes in the text, which we'll have reviewed, are basically the words that go with the music. So if there's any questions, Ed?
Thank you, Ed Bateson, District 3. I just want to, the thing you just handed out, I just want some clarification on deferral program. It says, and is subject to availability. If we pass this, there's no such thing as availability. They're entitled. I mean, you can't, if they meet the requirements of this, we can't pick and choose.
That's got to be a placeholder, though. There have to be some comfort language around that, because the concern is the plan is for it to be long-term self-funding. If we had 100 seniors say, I want to sign up for it tomorrow, the cost of the town would be such that it would compromise the rest of the program. Now, in our view, based on history, I mean, typically the seniors who sign up for any flavor of deferral, you can count on your fingers and toes. So we don't expect that that's a real concern. I put those words in as a placeholder. We can certainly tweak them a little bit, but I actually was a concern raised by Representative Schwartz, and I mean, it is a concern that if too many people, if this program became too popular too soon, it would be difficult to finance.
I know it's tough and nobody has a crystal ball and we can't predict, but I'm going to have serious reservations about if we don't have a cost estimate and everyone goes to this program and all of a sudden, hey, sorry guys, we ran out of money, it's too expensive. It's the law, it's the law. You know, if we pass the code, this is it, we have to hold up our word. So I just want you to know that I'm uncomfortable with the subject to availability phrasing in there. If we pass this, everyone's getting it. I mean, that's, you know, that's my intent. I mean, if we don't have a dollar number or it scares us, then I think we should revisit the language and up the percentages.
The language is not, well,
You know what I mean, limit our exposure.
I'm, you know, again, I'm not married to those words. We put those in for comfort's sake. We can change them.
Okay. I'll think about that over the course of the month. Thank you.
Okay. Carolyn?
Carolyn Richmond, District 1. I was a member of the committee. Specifically for your question, there is a dollar limit, and it's 4% of the taxes levied, which would have been $9 million. So that is our upper limit according to our past ordinance and this current ordinance. Now, what is not in here is how you apply it. In other words, we've never run up against it because the last 5 years we've been somewhere between $3 and $3.2 million, and the number of participants have been pretty much flat. So we've never come close to the limit. And I think one of the questions is, if we do get to the limit, our maximum limit right now would be $9 million this year. So the question then becomes, is there a priority? And that may be one way of looking at it, is maybe you prioritize which option comes first. Most people use the credit because it's a simpler one, and most seniors do not like the idea of liens, and so that's why that deferral program has not been used. But because we have made it richer by making it 50% of the taxes, not just the increases, more may decide to use that program. So I think one way may be, we may need to be more specific instead of subject to availability, is maybe which order in which we apply the different programs. That maybe credit gets the priority, then the freeze and the deferral, whatever you want to do. But there is a limit. And I do believe that the $9 million we've not come close to. We do know what the max would be, and that given that our seniors, the whole idea of this is so that our seniors will have the ability to stay in the town, and so that we do not lose that part of our population. When you look at comparing 2000 data to 2010, there are a couple of things that occurred in 2010 that's not reflected in that data. With the reval, a lot of the seniors in the older areas, their houses saw over 30% increase in appraisal value, which meant then their taxes, many of them saw a 50 to 60% increase in 1 year in taxes. So we're now going to be seeing the effect of that, because most of them have finished the period where they've gone through the negotiations with the town, they've settled or whatever. So I think the impact of those increased values and increased taxes, we'll start seeing fairly soon the effect on the seniors. It's just that there's been a delay because of going through that whole process. But anyway, I hope that was just trying to answer what the maximum was.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Richmond. That did answer the $9 million. That's what I was looking for, that there was some form of insurance. I agree with you, though. I think you should maybe prioritize about how you're going to address that program by program. I think that was a good point you brought up, and I would encourage you doing that.
Do you want to address that?
Yeah.
Representative Patton, just follow up to address that earlier point.
Mark Patton, District 7. To address Ed's comment and others, the one thing that we're considering that Representative Schwartz had brought up at committee meeting, and that we're going to try and meet again and fine-tune some of this based on all the comments, is to put basically some kind of cap percentage, 10, 20, 15. We're not going to know the exact number. We're going to number crunch and talk to Bob Mayer and see what the best thing is to feel it out. To say that, in essence, for the deferral program, we'll put appropriate wording in that says applicants to the deferral program, this amount or amount cannot be given out to this program that doesn't exceed 25% of that 4%. Does that make sense? So that, in essence, prevents 1 million people or 2,000 people from jumping in on the deferral program, and then nobody gets any money on the straight credit program because it was used up for this other program.
Okay, I'm assuming how Mr. Ross would handle that would be like on a first-come, first-served basis? When you get to that certain point? I mean, imagine, I'm just trying to think about how they're going to work it at the office.
Okay, to answer the question, it's not they come in and they request the specific program. Okay, if they meet the income criteria, if they meet the income criteria for the credit, they'll receive the credit. If they specifically request the deferral program, they receive the deferral program if they meet the eligibility requirements. It's not a question of prioritizing first credit, then the freeze, then the deferral. Okay, if they meet the income criteria and they request a deferral, we give them the deferral.
So in other words, if, to use some round numbers, if that 4% is based off the grand list, not the budget. So if it's
clarification on the 4% number, the ordinance says 4% of real property taxes.
Tax levy.
Okay, just want to make sure that's clear. 4% of real property taxes is allocated to the funding of elderly tax relief.
So, understood. I'm trying to simplify it. So to use round numbers, if that number is $250,000, the maximum the entire tax relief program can hit is 4% of that. We've never come close. As far as I know, we've hit probably 1.2 or 3% of that. So if we put 25% of the no more than 25% of that total 4% of the $250 million hypothetically can exceed that, you're never going to hit that. So you're not going to have to worry about is somebody coming in and they're not going to get it. If they apply and they qualify, they're going to get it. The pie gets divided up based on that ceiling, but if we potentially hit that ceiling.
Okay, I see where you're going with that.
But I think the point is, getting back to what I said in the beginning, this is new. It's a more generous program. The reason we're putting it on the table is to address concerns that we've heard where seniors said, I cannot longer afford to live in this town because of the taxes. This is a way we can address that. Now, again, historically, if seniors have not warmed up to the deferral program, what we're hearing is, no, we don't want a deferral program, we want the credit. And that's what history has demonstrated, and that's what we think is going to happen going forward. But because this deferral program is so much richer than what we've had in the past, it has to be implemented in a very measured approach, because over time it would become self-funding, but we can't, it will crater if it becomes too popular too quick.
Yeah,
so our concern is it financially doesn't compromise the credit program. So we do have to put words around it, and whether those words are subject to availability, meaning it gets in line behind the credit itself, whether we have to wrap additional words around that and make sure that the credit program is fully funded before we start thinking about that. Ultimately, I think Don Shop is going to have to be the gatekeeper of that.
Okay, I see where you're going, and obviously in our discussion here, you share the same concern I do about...
Right,
I get it.
absolutely, we
right.
all do. We're mindful of that. We don't think it's going to be a problem, but we don't know for a fact it is, and we do have to wrap comfort words around that. And exactly what those comfort words are, I put subject to availability right now, which is kind of a high level, but we can massage those words and get something that's workable.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Representative Garscott?
Josh Garskoff, District 5. Thank you for this. This is helping me a lot. Yeah, thank you. Is there a way to get any predicted, and maybe this is for Mr. Ross, or I'm not sure for who, but I think we're all kind of worried and wondering what the costs associated with these various changes would be, and I know it would only be a prediction or an assumption or an estimate, but is there a way to do that, to go ahead and make those?
Yeah, let me help you out quick, because I already did some analysis. It's as good or as bad as my model, but by raising the upper limit of the income, that allows, that makes, instead of 2,600 seniors eligible, 2,900. Now, understand, historically, our participation rate's been 62%. Okay, so so if you just do straight percentages, that would say, well, that would be a 12% increase in and of itself. By eliminating the two-tiered system and moving everybody to the higher, richer credit associated with the merit credit, that would be another 12% in and of itself. So those two together, doing math simply, is 24%. However, when I sat down and took a look at where the different seniors would fall in terms of their income levels, it seemed to me there was a disproportionate amount that fell in the higher level. So I think that increase, instead of just adding those two together, is going to be closer to 47%, doing a swag ad. And you saw the very busy box. Sorry about that. But again, it's I'd like to have another set of eyes. Bob Mayer look at that. It's a swag. It's an estimate. It's as good as bad as the assumptions of the model. But
that's option one, right? What about for options two and?
That's all three, actually. That's all three if they were to occur in a single year. So I mean, so in other words, if we had these changes in place this year, instead of 3.4 million, I would estimate that would have jumped to 5 million. So
that would be with all three of these changes.
That's correct.
Made. Okay.
That's correct. But that's not taking into consideration the other element of this, whereas there a degree of self-adjustment as taxes go up in future years. There will be some tax credit increase as well.
But your best guess is that if we pass this whole thing, we'd go for something like 3.4 to 5 million costs for the coming year or for this year.
That's my best guess, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Dean?
Representative Dean, District 4. I'm just a little confused about the credit aspect. You were talking about massaging the words a little bit and for limits and whatnot just beforehand. Maybe I missed something when I was listening. If you could just
That was
clarify.
specific to the deferral itself.
To deferral, not to the credit. Because you talked about a richer program, but some wording would have to be changed. And what wording are you talking about, and when would this change be taking place?
It was to Ed's point that there's words in there right now subject to availability, which is in keeping with the idea that we did not want the deferral program to compromise the credit program, meaning that we want to make sure that the credit was fully funded before we started talking about the deferral. So in a sense, the deferral would have to get in line behind the credit.
Right.
So so there has to be some degree, as I said, we'll have to figure out a way, and I don't have the right words necessarily, but some way that seniors looking for the deferral program, in a sense, get in line behind those who are looking for the credit. And we make sure we have those, funding available for them.
My question is, if you're changing wording, that's what you're talking about, trying to make sure that the wording would be perfect so that we're protecting the pure meaning and what our desire is. When and where will that wording change take place?
Well,
Because that's what I'm a little confused about.
Next month. Yeah.
Before next month. That's,
right.
that's the question.
Right. I mean, I've not discussed it with Stan Lesser yet. I've passed it over to Mike, but he's been busy.
Right.
Haven't you, Mike? Just a little bit. That's what I thought. So it got pushed off to a back burner, I think. But I know first thing tomorrow morning, I'm sure this will be up and rolling.
Okay, so this is going to the town attorney then?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
David McKenzie, District 3. Tom, my understanding is that this is not a line item in the budget approved by the RTM. Is that correct?
It's not a line. I mean, the way I've always noticed it, it's if you. Okay. Reduction of revenue. Yeah.
Well, I'm suggesting that because it's now about 1.2% of the total budget and could be up to 4%, that it be a line item so that what we vote on when we look at the bottom line when we're voting on the RTM budget, we see it as a % increase over the previous year. In other words, I'd like it to be an item that is looked at specifically.
Okay, well, I can't speak.
I know you don't know. I heard somebody say that, but everything in a budget is an estimate. And there's a lot of repeat in this one. At least you said so last time.
Well, what I was about to say is I can't speak that one way or the other. It's outside the scope of our committee in terms of how it's presented in the budget.
How would we go about
that would be a question
doing
for the
that?
Mayor, I think. Okay, please.
This body votes on the expense items in the budget. If you're making an adjustment to revenue, you'd vote on that by, excuse me, by voting this program in. We would apply this, and that would change the revenue line. But because it would depend on how many folks sign up, you would never be voting on this again. Once you vote on this, this is not going to change for 2 years.
Okay, when you say it's a revenue item, I view it as it's a hit to revenue, but I view it as an expense. It's the same as a school roof.
Yeah, you can look at it that way, but it's a revenue line.
Okay. I just see it as an expense, and because it's going to contribute to the increase over the previous year, I'd like it to see it that way. I have no idea how to make it happen.
Yeah, if you look in the front of the budget book, there's actually, it shows on a one-page summary of the revenue and changes in revenue, it does show the change in the senior tax relief program for last year. And you'd see this adjustment in that same place, but you wouldn't vote on that. This body's in two parts. Every year you're going to vote on the budget. Once every 2 years you're going to vote on this program and the rules, and then we're going to execute this program per the rules you give us. So if nobody signs up for this program, there's no revenue reduction. If twice as many people sign up, there's more. And you're looking at, based on the numbers that I heard, and if you'll forgive me doing simple math, and we do need to get a closer look at this, but about a 0.75% tax increase based on what this program does.
Okay, I hear what you're saying.
About a 0.75% tax increase based on what this program does. Right? If you
I'll pursue it
raise
in a
taxes
different way.
$1.6
Thank
million,
you.
you've got to cover that someplace else.
Joe DiMartino, District 4. Tom, thank you for putting this together, by the way, and walking us through this. You said that this page, sorry, thank you. You said that this page here is from the town website, or is available on the town's website?
Yeah, actually, we see, you can go back and look at it 10 years.
Okay. I know we're talking about the major characteristics of this with the 3 different options, and I'm not sure when to mention this, but at the very bottom, I would just suggest that it accurately reflects the note. In small print, it says to apply to applicants must be 65 years or old as of December 31st of the previous year. And it's not entirely accurate. When you look at Section C, Item 1, there are about 3 different characteristics, and one of them is age of 60 if they're the surviving spouse of someone who is eligible for the program. So maybe you just want to make a reference to that, if it's...
I mean, well, the idea is this is a thumbnail sketch. There's a lot of nuances when you get into the code itself.
Right.
And as Don said, you come in and you request the credit, and that's when you kind of go through all the specifics.
Okay.
But again, this is a high-level explanation of the program, and that's really what you need on the website.
Okay, it's the Cliff Notes. Okay. I got that, but maybe we should put some sort of asterisk.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Peter Ambrose, District 2. Through you, Mr. McCarthy, to Don Ross, and as a follow-up also, I think, First Selectman Tetro, to what you said, Representative Patton sent to us a handout from the budget for both Greenwich and for Stamford, and the budget was grossed up showing the tax relief as part of the budget. And my concern, to follow up on Mr. McKenzie's statement, is would we be better served as increasing the budget to reflect the amount that's allocated for the tax relief program, or by not showing it as a revenue item? I mean, it would seem to me that if Stamford and Greenwich are doing it, is there a reason why we're not doing it?
Who wants to address that?
Or is it something we should follow up and look into?
I'm not going to address it. Mike will have to.
I mean, simply put, let's take a look at it. I was just describing how it currently happens, but happy to look at doing it another way.
I mean, if it makes sense, we should.
Yeah, the difficulty is that no matter what you do, if the way the program works now, sooner or later you're making an estimate of how many people you think are going to participate in each one. You're making an estimate or projection on what you think the impact is going to be, or what the dollar impact is going to be. You can call it a revenue or an expense, but when you pass the budget, you're not going to know what that answer is. And once you pass the budget, you won't be able to adjust that during the year.
And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Representative Mottola?
John Mottola, District 2. Tom, can you tell me, under the credit program, the cap not to exceed, where did you get those numbers from?
That is just an uplift from the current high end of the program. It's just the percent was based on an average of a current year. So it seems to me the average tax was I want to say $6,600. And so if you took a look at everybody participating in the program in the current year, and I could actually show you, there's about 4 people who actually meet the average. Everybody else is above or below it, and there's quite a bit above. And so we, at some point in time, you have to cap it. I mean, I don't know there's anything particularly magic about $500, but for a 2-year period, again, the intent here is to insert some level of self-correction for tax increases where there hadn't been in the past. And this is a way to address one of the 6 concerns we've heard. We actually heard a lot of concerns. We had to pick and choose. And actually we took, we addressed quite a few. I was kind of surprised we were able to address as many as we did. I thought we'd have to leave some out. But, this is a pretty, it's certainly a big change from what we've had before, so I expect a lot of questions.
I don't know if you can answer this question. We've had this a program or something like this program for the last, 5, 6 years at least?
Oh, no.
Longer?
How long, Don?
15, 20?
To my recollection, 2002.
Okay.
Was the 4% figure always the figure, the 4%
I
cap?
believe so. I believe that's always been in the text. It's actually part of the tax code. And we
Okay.
actually took steps to kind of clarify specifically what that was. So we went through it, and actually, Ann Stamler found some really stuff that was very obscure.
Sure.
But we really cleaned up the words.
And then, and I've only been here on the RTM for the last year. And it's fair to say we've never come close to that 4% figure over the last 12 years.
No. It's, you know, it's there. It's kind of a safety net. We don't want to bump our head on it, clearly, but it kind of protects us from ourselves.
Okay. And this is probably a loaded question, but I would assume that since we have that 4% figure, we are assuming that if we ever reach that 4% figure, the town can afford that, which I think is a huge assumption.
Yeah, again, I think it's a safety net.
Okay.
It's not something we're supposed to approach. It's not something we ever have approached. We're not something that we're intending to approach. Again, these changes are put out there to address specific concerns that we have heard over a 6-month period repeatedly. And
my suggestion on the deferral program and the language that you put in there, I think you have to make it as clear as possible, as black and white as possible. I'm a little nervous when you start talking about giving certain individuals discretion, because you get into an issue with respect to whether or not you're treating people the same and equally. Not that anyone would want to treat someone differently, but you have that perception. I think it's a good idea to look at capping the deferral program at a certain percentage of the 4%.
okay,
Something like that.
Right. But again, we want to limit it in some fashion.
Right.
We're struggling with what words there need to be.
Sure.
But again, for purposes of tonight, I put that in as a placeholder, and like I told Ed, I'm not married to it.
Sure. Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Representative Carey?
You're welcome.
Dana Carey, District 8. So my question is around the filing period. So on the bottom of the 2011 form, it says February 1 to May 15th, 2012.
Right.
Is the filing period for what fiscal year?
The following fiscal year. And if you want real clarification, I would ask Don Ross to step up and give you specifics, because there's a timeline that I'm bound to misrepresent if I try to answer that question myself.
It's a simple answer. The state of Connecticut has tax relief programs. State of Connecticut filing times are February 1st to May 15th. So we track the state of Connecticut credit programs and have since the inception of the town tax relief program.
So when residents file between February 1st and May 15th, 2012, it is for the budget that begins July 1 for 2012.
No, July 1, okay.
For fiscal year 2013.
13-14.
Okay. So my question is, if residents file for a 2-year period and then have to refile, is it 2-year or 1 year?
It's 2 years, but the first year we have some language in there to make sure everybody's, it runs smoothly. And again, Don could probably speak to that timeline better than I can.
Well, so my question is, if residents are filing for whether it be a 1-year or a 2-year period, maybe it makes sense, if they file for a 1-year or 2-year period, can they file for the following fiscal year so that you have X number of residents who have filed for tax relief, and you can get a solid number, and then plan for it in the budget, so it's the following year, and then to add to the sweetener for it is, if we know that we're going to take $9 million of our budget, we've planned $9 million of our budget, but only $3.4 million has been requested by seniors, Can we put together a formula for residents who have lived in Fairfield for 60 years, they're 90 years old, and give them an additional credit back?
I was running with you for a while there.
Okay. All right, so let's say we have X number of residents who have filed for credit. We know we have a firm number, we can plan. This is the number that has been requested, and it's for not the current, it goes ahead to this, it skips a year. So then we have X number of residents who have filed for credit. We know that the number is, and I'll just take $3.5 million, is the number that residents have requested. So we've put a cap on, and this is where the number needs to be figured out of what makes sense in the budget. So we know that if there's a cap at $9 million, that when you go, you have 3.5, I'll round it, let's make it to 4. So then you know you have $5 million that's not being utilized.
And that's a good thing. We don't have to worry.
Right.
Yeah.
But how nice would it be for the resident who's 90 years old and has lived in Fairfield for 60 years to get an additional $500 credit? Like, pick a number, make a formula. We need to make a formula, but to be able to say, we've planned that we can afford, because it's part of our budget that we know what the number that we can afford is.
The $9 million is not there to reach. That's there to protect us from ourselves.
Okay, so then let's even say that $3.5 million has been requested. There's $4 million is kind of where we don't really want to go over. That's $500,000. Can we divide that up among, and for a resident, but we can. For a resident who has lived in Fairfield for 60 years, they're 90 years old, to be able to just put together a formula based upon, and put an extra, $50 or $500 as a tax credit.
Well, the formula is something we worked out, and it's, I think what you're suggesting is, well, if we have anything over and above that, we put that back out there. I think even if we wanted to do that, I mean, the idea is to define the program initially and seniors understand what their credit is going to be. And I don't think we have the arms and legs, I'm sure Don's office doesn't, to do what you're describing.
Okay, simple answers. We want to define the program the first year. Exactly, Tom. The state of Connecticut has biennial refiling for its state credit program. So once we define the program the first year, then we're proposing biennial refiling, which was just the biennial refiling for local ordinances was just permitted by state law this past, I think it was May. We just received the enabling legislation this past May for biennial refiling for local option tax credits. Okay, so we're going to establish a base year, first year, and then it's biennially thereafter. Also, staffing issues. We do have a limited staff, and we're bringing 1,600 people through the door as of last year with 3.5 staffers administering. Some of again the professional staff too. But, basically it's 3.5 staffers with professional staff help administering 1,600 applications in 1 year. So this kind of helps our situation as well.
Right. Which, by the way, makes it a simpler program for Don's office to administer and creates less work for him in terms of filing times as well. So, that's the intent. We define the tax credit. I don't think you need to go over it. It's more generous than it was significantly in prior years.
But I guess the first part of my question is, why is it that we can't have a period of time where residents file, and then we have a firm number and that you know and you can plan for, and that it's not as an item in the budget that reads dependent upon revenue? You know ahead of time, or we should have a relatively good sense of what that number is before the budget. Before the budget is written, so that you know what your number is of your credit, that your
deadline. Your filing deadline is May 15th. Right. So within 2 or 3 weeks of May 15th, you'll have a final number for the cost of the town tax credit program.
Okay.
Because we, also in the ordinance, we have to give a report the last Monday in June to the RTM on the numbers as of the end of June. Again, the timeline is May 15th is the end of filing, and then we have a few weeks to put the numbers together, make our report to the RTM by the end of June.
Okay. So the number is not an ambiguous number.
You'd always be a year off because you get your numbers after May 15th. The budget is already approved, so you'd be going on 2013's numbers for 2014's budget.
Right.
So that's your problem. So you're never going to be 100% accurate, regardless.
But you're 100% accurate by saying to your taxpayer, this is your tax credit, based upon your current.
I think if what you're saying is by going to a 2-year filing, we ought to have a better understanding of what the tax credit will be in the subsequent year.
Correct.
I think you're right. And we want to kind of sort through any other details. You and I can take it offline.
Okay.
Good.
Just one real thing. Like, it was mentioned that like Stanford and Greenwich, there's paperwork thrown around. Stanford, in the Stanford budget, they put amounts in for tax relief and other things. I think one of the things was, I can't remember now, houses that, people who were fighting their taxes. And they put reserves in them. So it's a reserve in the budget. So we could put a reserve in of the 4%, but it's really kind of this far-out astronomical number that really is not realistic.
Okay, we're going to move on. Representative Richmond. You have to take that off.
Carolyn Richmond, District 1. I wanted to speak to everybody about this because there's only a few of us that actually meet the age requirements in this room. And I want you to understand why this is so important. So many of our seniors are having a hard time staying here. And I really think the cap in the tax credit program demolishes what we were trying to do with the percentage. As an example, if you have a 15% tax credit and you have a tax bill of $15,000, then you would get a credit of $2,250. But if you put a limit of $1,400, then as taxes go up, that category would never see an increase. So I think by putting a cap not to exceed, it ruins our whole idea of having a percentage. The whole purpose of the percentage for the tax credit was to allow the taxpayer to receive increased benefits because we know each year the taxes will be increasing. And so I think that really delineate, just kind of knocks out the whole reason for doing the percentage. I would also like to say we're so concerned about how many people are going to do it. We do not put a limit on the number of children that can attend our schools. If they move into this town, we have to educate them. Our seniors are no longer in their prime earning years. They have raised their children. They have paid their taxes. They have volunteered in the town. The purpose of the tax relief program, I think, is to say thank you for being there for us and supporting the town. And if it costs us $9 million, the question is it worth $9 million to keep seniors in this town? If you don't think so, then that's the way you might want to vote. But I really hope that you support this and support our seniors to help them stay in this town. And I do think that the idea of raising the income, the whole reason we raised the income was because this last year we found a lot of them had to take money out of their IRAs in order to pay the increased taxes. That meant that their income went up and they no longer qualified for the tax credit program. So a lot of them fell out because of that. When you're on a fixed income, that's what it means. It's fixed. And so what the intent of this program was to address some of those particular issues and find a way to help our seniors. So I would urge you next month when you look at this to think about our seniors. We say it's a generous program. It might be by Connecticut standards, but it's not by the rest of the United States standards. Plenty of other states give real tax credit to their seniors. And I just think that we should not limit the opportunity of supporting our seniors. But I do think we ought to not use that cap, because then there's no reason to have a percent, because you're not allowing it to float, which was the intention. The deferral program, I'll speak real quickly to. The idea was to say, you've reached 75, which is amazing that you reach 75. So we want to give you this little kicker. You've got to realize that if you're 65, you do not qualify for the deferral program. The deferral program was meant to be this added kicker for those who have reached a little bit more golden age. And so that's the reason why it's 75. And so I do believe that that also will help limit a little bit. We do expect the freeze program to go away because it's really not much there. But I did want to speak to some of those issues because we have looked at those, and we really are trying to find a way to keep our seniors in this town. We do not want to see them. And I have to tell you, on my street, there's a whole bunch of them going. And because they could no longer afford to live here. And so I really urge you to think a little more generously, a little more broadly, and not be so afraid of the $9 million number. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative McKenzie? This was my question. $70,000 Social Security income, $1.5 million house. They have $50,000 in taxes. They defer $25,000 of it, or are you capping that? That was the question earlier on.
No. David McKenzie, District 3. Tom, congratulations also on this sheet. I think it's a very good summary. And I agree, Carolyn, that we want to keep the seniors in Fairfield. But I do believe the cap is appropriate, and if it should be more liberal cap, then fine. But to address what Carolyn was saying, I'd simply footnote that the cap will continue to grow with the increase in the town budget. Just move it up.
We can certainly look at that. I picked a number. Again, you know, when we found out that there was, Don and I had a discussion subsequent to the meetings last week. The deviation from the mean, which was the basis of the percent, was broader than I had thought, both above and below. So I picked a number. But again, it's something we can certainly talk about and fine-tune between now and next month.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members? Representative Bateson, not yet.
Hey, thanks, David. Ed Bateson, District 3. Thank you. Representative Mottola, I like where your head's at on this thing. I agree with you, the concern you share about the $9 million. And Ms. Richmond, your comments are sobering also when it comes to this. Being on the body for a couple of years, I've always taken some comfort in the tax relief that I kind of had in the back of my head where we were going with it, you know, up the percentages a little bit. In this one, I've got to gauge something in that we're significantly changing the options out there that might open us up to more people participating. Is that a good thing? Yeah, but I'm paying for it. I mean, that's a tough decision. What are we going to, in a couple of months, we're going to be nickel and dime in the budget. So I love seniors, but you're asking me to put a price tag on them. And then, you know, I love my wife, but I have given her my credit card. This is, I mean, I'm serious. Ed,
this is being televised, you know.
Mr. Tetro, my cable's still out. See what you can do for that. I want to support it. I just want to let you know where my head's at on this thing. It's just, wow. I mean, I really got to think about it. And to the seniors out in the audience and, you know, normal taxpayers, I mean, Mr. Tetro said 0.75%. These are significant numbers that might happen, and I really, it's going to take me a month to think about this. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? Please.
Are there any other members Okay, we're going to do the first selectman, and then we're going to finish it. Oh, you can...
Just to add an observation, what I really like that the committee is structuring, if you flash forward 10 or 15 years down the road and look at the deferral program, what you've got are people signing up for the deferral program to get their taxes at half rate or cut in half on that. And then you have other people that at that point in time are starting to sell their homes, and some of that money is coming back into this town. So there's a revenue source now from this that's coming back in. Right? So at some point in time, Tom used the word self-sustaining. Now, that you might quibble over whether it exactly matches or not, but there's basically a lot of revenue coming back in for the revenue that we're giving up to keep our seniors here in town. I think that's a very exciting concept. The challenge, how do we get from day one to the first 10 or 15 years? So to represent Richmond's point, that's what we're trying to find, is a mechanism to get there. And if we have to put some caps on in the interim to allow the town to afford to get there. We're not arguing over where we're going. The question is, what's the rate of change? How can we effectively get there? So I think it's a very powerful concept. I compliment the committee on what they did here. And if we can just focus on how we get from A to B, I think that's the challenge. In 10 or 15 years, it starts to self-generate, and it's a great boon to our seniors, it's a great boon to the town, and it provides a way to kind of, again, keep it self-sustaining. So thank you for your thought and effort on that.
Representative Patton, you wanted to finish it also?
Yeah, just to put a couple things in perspective. First off, some of you brought some questions up with the deferral program that, between the old one and the new one, that you might still be confused. So hopefully you understand, the old deferral program only allowed you to defer the difference in your tax from last year to this year. So if your tax was $1,000 last year and this year it's $1,500, you could defer $500. So in all sense of realism, those of you who had, property taxes increase moderately, let's say last year, so you might have paid $7,000 in tax, now you're paying $7,300 or $400. It's only that $300 or $400 that you could defer from year to year. So that's why nobody used the program before. So that's one reason why we wanted to get rid of it. The freeze program, there are people on it, so we figured we'd leave that as it is. So the deferral program that we're proposing is scary, but it is brand new. The old program was basically a waste of people's time. And to use the tax assessor's report from June, out of 1,578 people that use the whole tax credit or deferral or freeze programs, 1,554 used the credit program. That's cash back. 16 used the deferral program. Because if you do the math, if it was you, it doesn't make any sense to want to go and take a lien on your house for $500, right? So this is a significant amount of money, as Carolyn said, to keep seniors in their houses, which is what we've all been hearing for the last, 5 years. That's all I have to say.
Okay. I did say we close it off. Is this something we can ask offline afterwards? Can we do this after the meeting? Because I did say we were going to end it. Fine. Let's take it quick.
It's tied to the 10-year Treasury bill currently, if that's what your question is, which is currently roughly at 3%, Don? If that's what your question.
Ellen Jacob, District 9, on the deferral program. Speaking of being self-sustaining and how we get there, wanted to know a little more about the interest being charged to the taxpayer whose taxes are being deferred. Is it either or?
At this point in time, interest is being charged. As Mark said, it's based on a 10-year Treasury, which is about 3%. That has been a point of concern. It's something we're looking at. That's about all I can tell you right now.
Will that language be tightened up or changed, or because unless I read it wrong,
We haven't specifically addressed the interest. As of this point in time, it's still in there, still simple interest, as I believe. It's in the
yeah,
in the
it
text.
said simple.
Yeah. At this point in time, we don't plan to change it.
Oh, okay, because it said 3% or the rate on 10-year Treasury. So is that a choice, or?
Yes. Well, no, it's the lower of the two.
The lower of the two, okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I got that right. Yeah.
Okay, well, it would be good to maybe be clearer, or unless you want more
Well,
options.
It's actually all in the language of the tax code with all the revisions we
State-
placed in there.
oh.
Yeah. I mean, again, for the purpose of this discussion, you really don't want to go through the minutia of the words. We try to present it here at a high level so everybody can understand it at a high level.
Thank you.
If you'd like to take it offline, I'll show you in the tax code.
Okay, we're going to wrap this up now, and thank you, Representatives Patton and McCarthy. And Donald Ross, thank you. We're going to go to our last item, which is number 9, to consider and act upon any other matters presented to said meeting, which may be properly acted upon under the rules of representative town meeting. I've been asked by 2 people, but we'll begin with Carolyn Richmond for a moment of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Some of you probably already know, but many of you may not. This is my last meeting. Our family, the Richmonds, will be leaving Fairfield. And it's very sad, but I have really enjoyed working with all of you, and particularly my District 1 reps, and I think we did a good job in representing our district, and I have enjoyed working with all of you and being on the RTM. My husband's family has been in Fairfield for over 100 years. We're still in the same house, and we're still there. We thank goodness for the dike, which after the hurricanes in the 50s, which they put in, the house is still standing. But circumstances, and I guess that's the one reason I fought very hard for my residents and our community in terms of what was happening with taxes, what was happening with appraisals of tiny old homes. And a number of people have moved out on our street, and there's more to come. And it's going to be sad. Unfortunately, we're going to have to do the same thing. But we leave Fairfield knowing that it's a great community, it's got great people, and I really have enjoyed working with everybody and with this group. And I appreciate all the support I've always had, and I know that you will continue to do what's right. And just remember that a community is made up of all ages, all types, all careers, and we need to keep that as a community, because that's what a community is. But I do thank you for the privilege of working with you, and hopefully I'll come back and visit again. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Carolyn, for your service. Thank you. Thank you again, Carolyn, for your service, and we wish you the best of luck in your move. I've also been asked by Representative Mezoff for a moment of personal privilege.
We may go past 11. You want to vote now? The best advice that I've ever gotten about making one of these very quick, and I'll be very quick, presentations is do it in 3 parts. Tell your audience what you're going to say it, then tell them what you said. So I'm going to say thank you, in particular to those in our town leadership for their work, their exceptional work in seeing us through a recent hurricane. What I feel that as a community we've had an opportunity. We've seen how critical our leadership is. We sometimes in this body get tangled up in some of the minutia. But I think it's important to pay attention to the folks in this town who work very, very hard. And in particular, during that time of crisis. Getting through this storm and taking care of each other was possible, and it's possible to get back on our feet because we were aware that we were being taken care of. It took a well-organized team effort. It allowed us the comfort and the confidence that we'll be able to get back on track, and it was truly a vast team effort. I was down at the police station a number of times. I wasn't in trouble. I was down there to see, you know, I saw the police officers coming and going. I saw Mike coming and going every day. I talked to Mike Lauterborn. He said he saw you there every day, early in the morning until late at night. So what I would like to say to our first selector, Mike Tetreault, was this is the man where the buck stopped. And often the kind of decisions that he had to make are the tough decisions because they are the decisions that are where the buck stops. We owe Mr. Tetreault, Mike, can I call you Mike? Okay. Our respect, we owe him our gratitude for stepping up at a time when big mistakes could have been incredibly costly. His dedication to serving Fairfield was evident every day during that time, and it continues to be so. So, as a member of what the British would call the loyal opposition, I am, in this moment of personal privilege, saying thank you, Mike Tetreault, for a job very, very well done, and for the effort that I know is ongoing. Sit down, I have to tell you what I said. Actually, John Kenneth Galbraith, a well-known economist, said it best when he said, "All of the greatest leaders have had one characteristic in common. It is willingness to confront unequivocally the major anxiety of their people in their time. This, and not much else, is the essence of being a leader." So thank you, Mike.
That was very nice, Amy. The next meeting will be held on December 17 at this location, with committee meetings to take place on December 10th and 12th at Riverfield Elementary All-Purpose Room. For those of you who aren't writing that down or will forget that, I will send you a reminder. May I have a motion to adjourn? Representative Palmer, a second, Representative Garskoff. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Sunman? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.